on an anti-Trump mission, and President Obama may be involved.
That's really funny.
Look at Juan.
I mean, I
Joke's
love it.
on you, Juan.
Juan can barely control
I mean, I
himself.
think, at some point, Jesse, it's like, they talk about fog of war. This is fog of foolishness.
Okay,
At
tell me
some
why.
point, because it's obvious the president, and Dana picked up on this, Democrats are upset that President Obama did not do enough in terms of the Russian interference that he and the intelligence agencies had confirmed was taking place during the 2016 election.
Okay.
The idea that the FBI should be briefing the president on Russian interference is not far-fetched. That makes sense. That's
How do
what's
you
going
know
on.
that's
So hang
what
on.
President
Let
Obama
me
wanted
just say,
to be briefed on?
Because the circumstances, the timing is exactly right. Not only that, the Wall Street Journal has an article out today, and it says, texts from the 2016 preparation to brief Barack Obama about Russian interference in that year's election. So Jesse,
you're sure that these Trump-hating FBI
Jesse,
officials
I don't interrupt
weren't
you. I
preparing
let you, Jesse,
anything
I
else
let
to
you
brief the
rant
president?
and rave on this show.
I thought it was
really
pretty
do.
calm.
I let you have
For you, yeah.
I let you have the floor. But Jesse, at
ahead.
some point, don't you think it would be good, instead of always throwing up conspiracy theories to try to defend the indefensible, Donald Trump, you might come with some facts?
You've been calling this whole thing a conspiracy for the last year, yet
Oh, my
every
gosh.
time facts come out, it proves you wrong.
Give me some facts. I'm saying
Everything
tonight,
you said about Hillary's probe was rigged.
Oh my gosh! Please, Jesse,
Please.
tonight.
No,
We've been
Russian
reporting this
on
for a
this
year.
topic. Don't bring Obama into it. Just on this
I
topic.
didn't bring him into it.
You always
He's
do.
in the text.
But
Oh,
Juan,
yeah.
we
How
have
about
it's the
Clinton?
text messages, part of the elements for tonight's show. Is he supposed to
See
ignore
that?
them?
Right, but I'm saying everybody knows what this is about, except
No.
Jesse, who
I
wants
hedged.
to make it
I
because
hedged and
Jesse
said it
is
could have
so
been about
concerned.
Clinton, the Russia probe, or the Trump surveillance.
Guess what?
We
even
don't know.
today,
Maybe
yes,
he
you
could
do.
answer some
even
questions.
today, Eric Holder at a breakfast meeting said President Obama never contacted him about any FBI investigation.
I don't trust Eric
Oh,
Holder
here we
as far
go.
as I can throw him.
Here
The guy
we
was
go.
held in contempt
Didn't
of
you
Congress.
say? Did we just play a clip of President Obama saying he doesn't get involved in FBI investigations? Well, whether it's about Donald Trump or the Russian investigation, he's involved, right?
No.
He just said,
wasn't
"I never-"
involved. He's asking, tell me what's going on with the Russians trying to influence an American election. That is appropriate.
You're putting words in the text.
Oh, I see. Okay. The Wall Street
think-
Journal is too, I guess.
The thing is that with every bombshell, it's like we're getting shell shocked because no one is a bombshell. Every time new information comes out, the more texts come out, we forget about the last ones. I always think that the best references in these stroke page texts have to do with Hillary. You know, when on September 28th, you were talking about the Andy's office meeting. He said, new emails came out, the Huma and Wiener emails came out. And he says, Stroke says, will this never end? Struck. Will this never end? He's dying to wrap up this Hillary thing. And you go back 5 months before when he says, when Trump was going to be the nominee. Remember when Cruz dropped out and Trump was going to be the nominee? They were going crazy on the text. I can't believe it. Oh my gosh, Trump is going to be the nominee. And now the pressure starts to finish the MYE. We know what that is, the Hillary investigation. He was trying to wrap up that Hillary investigation. And Juan, that's your evidence. It's all over the place. Bring in the jury. I will stand and I'm ready to lecture the jury. There are so many incriminating texts in this.
You know, he was right about one thing.
What's that?
It will never end.
Yeah.
We're still talking about it. And
Exactly.
It's 2018. One thing it does go back to over and over again is this decision by Hillary Clinton and her team that allowed her to do it, including the White House, that allowed her to have a private server, a separate set of circumstances, emails that got destroyed, wiped up from the server. These guys end up talking about that, they're having their affair and talking about business and investigations on their government phones.
This is the unsexiest
Blows me
affair
away.
ever. Did they talk about anything?
I don't know. A lot of it was redacted, right? Was there I don't know. Did you read the whole thing?
We didn't.
It's
We
not
didn't
even
get
a
the
meet
good-
me for
we didn't get
coffee
the
or
good
what are you, there's
stuff.
not even a what are you wearing? There's nothing.
No, at one point he says, is it okay for me to send you some pictures? Ooh. It did. That's what it said.
Coming up on the phone.
We don't have the pictures.
We
Oh,
like
we don't
pictures, but
No, we don't.
not those kind of pictures.
Pretty sure we don't.
But Tom, just because we have two lovers who are sending, I mean, it's unbelievable how many emails they sent, right?
Yeah.
50,000. it doesn't mean that you can't have personal opinions.
It does.
Guess
One,
what?
it's more than that. People keep saying that. It's just people with a bias. They can put it aside.
They do.
They can't put it aside.
Why can't they
He's
put
going to
it
be
aside?
president. I'm losing my mind! Exclamation
so
point.
what?
It's unbelievable.
Oh, you think
We've got to do
you
something. I
must
mean,
be
it's very
forgetting-
incriminating.
You must have forgotten
National
Election Day
Security.
2016. There are people in this building screaming.
But also, they
Really?
must have been very
That was you.
ineffective. I mean, to the point, like if they were trying to stop something, they were very ineffective
Man.
because, again, Comey's letter 10 days before the election is what so many Democrats point to as the point where they saw a lot of independent women's support drop in all of the key states.
Well, it
I don't
should
know.
have
I
dropped
think that
more
President
if he
Trump,
didn't change
looking
the
back,
wording,
I think
though,
he was
right?
going to win anyway.
But our guy, Strzok, right?
Strzok.
He changed the
As in
words. He changed it from,
Strzok.
what's the words, Jesse? From extremely negligent to,
Yeah,
oops,
Whoops.
yeah, to
They downplayed it.
And so it would have dropped even more if he didn't water
you're
it
talking,
down.
You're talking
have a
about
Grassley
when
memo?
Comey was speaking in July,
Southern
not
Grassley
in
memo?
September, early October.
See?
What?
They'll never.
I want to tell you guys about this other memo that dropped last night, this Grassley memo. Now, this is really interesting, Juan. I'd like to hear your defense on this. So, Hillary
I think you're the defender.
crony, Sid Blumenthal.
Yep.
Yeah.
He was feeding anti-Trump smears through the Obama State Department, and it wound up in Chris Steele's dossier. Now, Christopher Steele's dossier was based, now we know, on two things: Russian government sources
Yes.
and Sid Blumenthal's lies. The FBI also knew that Christopher Steele had been lying and had been leaking to the press about this. Yet they still used the dossier, and they still used Steele's credibility to the FISA court to present that as justification for spying on the Trump associates. Why would the FBI do that? Why would they hide the funding from the judge? Why did they
They didn't
deceive
hide
the
it.
judge?
Let me get we got Trey Gowdy on this, and I'm going to ask you to give your reaction, Juan.
Okay.
When you hear who the source, or one of the sources of that information is, you're going to think, oh my gosh, I've heard that name somewhere before. Where could it possibly have been? And
The foreign source?
the domestic source, and I'm trying to think how Secretary Clinton defined him. I think she said he was an old friend who emailed her from time to time. I
Sidney
think that's
Blumenthal?
that'd be really warm. You're warm. Yeah.
That'd be hot.
Not warm.
Ding, 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 ding,
All
ding.
right, so Juan, get you to respond to that.
So I don't get it. Much of what's
We
in
know,
the
Juan,
Steele,
you don't get it.
I don't get you. I don't get why you think that this is somehow an indictment of the Steele dossier or the investigation. I would hope that you would have every source available if you are trying to get information about how the Russians are trying to influence our election and potentially colluding with
The
candidate Donald
source
Trump.
of the dossier was a Hillary crony
It doesn't
and
matter.
Russian liars in the Russian
Okay,
government.
so here's the thing, Jesse.
So do you think
If
that that's
it's
enough
true-
to present to a judge to spy
Yes,
on Americans?
Jesse.
It's not.
No,
because
okay,
it's
Jesse.
not verified,
Jesse,
Juan.
the judge
You're
was
not allowed
told-
to do that.
Excuse, yes, you are. The
No, you're
judge-
not. You cannot present unverified information
my
to a
gosh.
FISA judge.
Jesse, slow down, man. Let me talk for a second.
You
You might
cannot.
learn something, okay? But clearly, the judge was told that the source of the dossier
Yes.
was a political partisan. The judge
No.
understood
Was
this.
political.
Okay,
Was a
Did
player.
not say where it came from.
Yes,
Gonna
didn't
get Dana and
specify, but they're
Tommen.
political.
Okay, so it has
So
no
here's-
bearing whether or
It
not the
doesn't
opponent
matter. No,
of the
it
person they're
doesn't.
running
If
for
it's
president
true,
against.
it's true.
It wasn't true.
Of course it was true.
What
But
was
let me
true
just-
about the dossier?
I'm not getting into that here, but I will
Name
make
one
this
thing.
point. You know what,
We have
Jesse?
the same
one
things
thing.
like Groundhog
All that
Day.
we know about today is
One.
this day with this business about the FBI lovers and their
Can't
texts.
do it.
He's not even
You
a
guys are so desperate
Can't
to
do it.
somehow undermine Robert Mueller. You'll do anything. Republicans will put on
But
blinders
no, but never-
not to see the
undermine
truth
themselves,
about
Juan.
Donald
But
Trump.
nevertheless,
Open your eyes.
you've not been able to proffer one fact forward that was accurate or true in the dossier to support that.
Are you
Therefore,
kidding?
it's lacking any kind of
Oh,
credibility
I
or
see.
veracity.
Oh, yeah. How
Dana.
about the Russians interfered in our presidential election?
Well, and that's one thing that Trey Gowdy also said to
said
Martha
what?
last night in the interview is that regardless of the dossier, there would have been an investigation about Russian meddling in the election. But the other thing I want to say about the Grassley memo that you mentioned that kind of irritates me about the Nunes memo, that apparently, remember I made this whole big thing about how you shouldn't take a Yahoo News article in to convince the judge that there's corroboration? Well, in the Grassley memo, it says it wasn't used for corroboration, that Yahoo News article. So I feel like I get cautious about commenting on all of this because it's cherry-picked information. It's not complete.
I don't get what you mean.
The Grassley memo says that the Yahoo News article derived from Steele was used to corroborate Steele, but that is not why the article was referenced. The Grassley memo appears to confirm that it was not presented for the purpose of corroboration.
So there's a contradiction,
yes,
therefore
but I was so
I didn't read
indignant
that
about
in the
it.
memo. I didn't see that. I know they did present it alongside the dossier.
Yeah. We got to
But it
get
was
Tom in, and then we're like
from
already in
Steele.
like the deep
I'll
line now. Go
be
ahead, Tom.
calm, Juan. I'll be calm. I'll be friendly. It's dirty. It's dirty.
It's dirty.
It's dirty.
You know what I think? Peter Strzok's going to start sending texts to Jesse, little love notes, and it's going to blow Jesse's mind.
Please don't.
The number of people, Juan,
They're going to both be Eagles
right.
fans.
and Steele was.
Yep, and I'll bleach them.
Okay, so we gotta go. You guys can continue this witty repartee during the break or not.
Yeah.
We have the greatest military in the world, and our commander-in-chief wants to show it off. But President Trump's getting pushback on his idea to hold a parade for our troops. That's next on The Five. Won't you stay with us?
We have the most powerful military in the world, and President Trump wants to honor our service members with a parade. He got the idea from watching Bastille Day celebrations on a trip to France in the summer. The Pentagon's looking at options.
I think we're all aware in this country of the president's affection and respect for the military. We've been putting together some options. We'll send them up to the White House for decision. The president's respect, his fondness for the military, I think is reflected in him asking for these options.
Of course, the parade of critics are crowing about the idea.
This is beneath us as a nation. We are the most powerful military on earth. We're very proud of that, and rightly so. We don't need to be parading our military hardware down Pennsylvania Avenue to show that to anybody.
That it's a fantastic waste of money to amuse the president.
We have a Napoleon in the making here. I think everyone should be offended by his need to always be showing.
So I was reading Twitter last night, and Ari Fleischer, one of your guys, press secretary, said when he was, I think, 30, they had the 91 Desert Storm Parade in America, and it was a spectacle that he really enjoyed.
Yep, and he said he wouldn't mind doing it again. And it was after that big military victory. It cost $12 million at the time. Apparently, this would cost upwards of $22 million. Jennifer Griffin was on the show today, the 2 p.m. show, and I asked her what is the reaction of the Pentagon, and she said it was a collective eye roll.
Oh, gosh.
I do think that the Democrats, though, were very predictable in their response, and I don't think it was politically smart to do so. I think that what you should have said, if you're a Democrat, is to say, we honor the troops all the time. We love the military. In fact, what we should do, Mr. President, that money that you want to spend on the parade, let's put that into increasing wages for the men and women in uniform. I think that would be a better way to do it, Mr. President. And then they wouldn't look like they are just being petty and thinking that he's trying to turn us into a dictatorship. But the other thing is, as soon as I heard about this news, I knew it would be another one of these draw a line in the culture war sand. And if you are not for this, then you hate the military and don't like the president. And if you are for it, then you are turning the country into a dictatorship. I think that we do a lot of honoring of the troops. If they decide to have a parade and we decide as a country that it's worth the money to do it, great. But we shouldn't be you shouldn't be blind to the fact that there's a ton of politics here.
There are a ton of politics, and Dana makes the point that Democrats could get boxed in on the issue, Juan, just like they did with the national anthem in the NFL and the kneeling, where President Trump comes out strong with the side of the Patriots.
Is that right?
And,
I guess the
patriotic
Patriots
people. Thank gosh. And 30% of the Democrats on the far left look like they're anti-flag. Do you worry about that happening again?
Oh, I think it's inevitable to some degree because we have such a polarized group of Americans these days. So the president, people who are Trump supporters will say, well, he wants a big parade. He's honoring the military. It's all about patriotism. You stop and you say, well, how many patriotic presidents have we had? And nobody does this. Where do we see this kind of thing? We see it in Red Square. We see it from the North Koreans.
But he saw it in France.
What about
He
France?
saw it in
I thought you guys loved French people.
Yeah,
you always want to imitate the French.
But let me tell you, the French have a tradition. You know, Bastille Day goes back a ways because of the French Revolution.
That is true.
And when George H.W. Bush did this, we had just won something there was something to celebrate. On the contrary, we're still stuck in Afghanistan at the moment.
Well, I think maybe one idea, Kimberly, is to do it on the 100-year anniversary of America's victory in World War I, which would be November, and that way it might be less political. And I would like to nominate you to be the Grand Marshal.
Oh, I would love it. Indeed, I would. Yeah. I love a good parade. I do. I mean, a nice lawful parade where people are respectful and then they, like, you know, clean up the streets after.
That's right.
Yes, exactly. I think it would be fantastic to have something like this. I would really enjoy it. I think the president is genuine and sincere in his appreciation, his love for the military. They do so much. It's like, so we want to begrudge them a parade? Why? Why not? Why wouldn't any patriotic American say, let's have a nice parade? I get it about expenses and this and that, but we seem to spend a lot of money recklessly and foolishly on things that don't matter. And I think our liberty and our personal freedoms and freedom of expression that people gleefully enjoy in this country that has been hard fought and won are by the brave men and women in our military. And so I'm all for honoring them in any way for the large sacrifices.
Would you wear a helmet? Would you wear a helmet if you were in the tank and you were rolling down Constitution?
No, she's not Dukakis.
I wanted to be Mike Dukakis. That's right.
Are you pro-parade or anti-parade?
I mean, what a perfect, you know, that I could use that as a voting brochure. If you're pro-parade, I'm going to vote for you. Parades are fantastic, and it's amazing how quickly we jump from parade to North Korea. I mean, it's quite amazing.
I was waiting for it. I was like, 1, 2.
I do wonder, though, like what you would have said if President Obama came up with this idea.
God.
I'm curious.
I wouldn't have. What a
tremendous waste of money. $20 trillion in debt.
Honest.
The trending photo.
The parade should definitely just have a bunch of guys with their laptops, because our best weapon right now is cyber. Cyber warfare is the most important weapon that we have.
A cyber parade.
No, they can have their own float, the computer guys.
All right.
And
Joe Biden out and about, letting it rip again on President.
You can go your own way.
Former Vice President Joe Biden hasn't kept his feelings about the president close to the vest, and he's not about to start now. Joe was fired up about Mr. Trump's attacks on the FBI, Democrats, and more in a brand new interview. Here are some highlights.
This is the first president to make a full-throated, unvarnished attack on the entirety of the FBI, sowing doubt about whether or not our justice system is fair, sowing doubt about whether or not there is anything that's remotely consistent with our Constitution. It's a disaster. I just marvel at some of the things he says and does. Like, what, 2 days ago, anybody didn't stand up and clap for him was un-American and then maybe even treasonous. Well, let me tell you, he's a joke.
Wow. Kimberly, how would you respond? Because I know you like Joe Biden.
Yeah, that he really took it down a few notches for me there.
Oh, okay.
I don't like it. But, I mean, look, I liked him in terms of his personality, whatever. I don't like his rhetoric and his comments about the president there. I think that, I don't know, it just seemed kind of like not in keeping with the Joe Biden we kind of know. I thought it was a little harsh, aggressive, and also inaccurate. I don't know that he served well for his future political aspirations by saying something like that, per se. Maybe, but there's people, I think, if you're Joe Biden, that you think you can get that are crossovers or independents. And I don't know, by saying something like that about the president, that was a smart, strategic political move. That's what I was thinking about.
So, Dana, when you watch it, I know you always look at things from a messaging point of view. Mm-hmm. One of the things that the former vice president had to say was that President Trump's always trying to undo everything that President Obama did, and he says, trying to undo the legacy so far, he's failed. Does that message?
Well, I think, I think the proof does not bear that out. I think the dereg piece of the Trump administration has been quite impressive, and that has been because, remember, President Obama got so frustrated and didn't want to compromise, so he decided he'd use his pen and a phone. Mm-hmm. And then that means that the next president can use a pen and a phone as well to undo that part of your legacy. And also on the judges front for President Trump, that's significant. I think that Biden, he personifies the Democrats' problem right now. Mm-hmm. On the one hand, he could really appeal to some Democrats, and like in the Northeast, maybe in the West. But there might not even be room for him in the Democratic Party if it continues to move so far left. And the other thing is, he will be 80 years old or so around the time that if he were going to be running in his upper 70s. And maybe, the upper 70s might be the new 50. But if you have all of these younger people in a very crowded Democratic primary, I think that will be really difficult. But I'm going to disagree with Kimberly on one thing. I think that Joe Biden has been a very effective attack dog for the Democrats for a long time. And President Obama could rise above and let him go out, and he's not afraid to mix it up.
No,
and
I agree with that.
They are,
just not
I
this
think
one.
that he thinks that, I think that Biden thinks he's counterpunching. And the Democrats are going to want somebody who is that aggressive.
Jess?
Well, listen, if Trump's the joke, then Biden's the punchline. The name Biden is synonymous with gaffe, whether it's telling someone in a wheelchair to stand up, dropping the F-bomb on a hot mic, or getting handsy with young ladies in a photo line. He hasn't distinguished himself as VP. If Dick Cheney had called Biden a joke or Obama a joke, I mean, there would have been hell to pay. So I didn't think it was in keeping with presidential or vice presidential protocol.
That's what I
And the elder statesmen of the Democratic Party have really been in the gutter recently. President Obama kind of hinted that Donald Trump was like Hitler. John Kerry was interfering in Trump's Middle East peace process. Hillary's accused President Trump of being a Russian traitor. And then VP Biden comes out and calls him a joke. I think they're a little desperate. One, he might be testing the waters, but they might need a heavy hitter to come out and throw some punches after the bad news the Democrats have endured the last couple weeks. But if you really want to get into a schoolyard taunt contest with President Trump, I don't think Biden's going to win that battle.
He'll have a nickname before long.
I think he said he wanted to take Trump out in the schoolyard at one point.
That's true.
So, Tom, here's the most surprising thing from the interview. He says that if he was one of Trump's lawyers, he'd advise the president not to meet and be interviewed by Robert Mueller.
That was the least surprising thing in the interview, Blonde.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course. I think everybody would give him that advice. I think the most surprising thing was this. A full-throated, unvarnished attack on the entirety of the FBI. What is he talking about? What is he talking about? It is not a full-throated attack on the entire FBI. Everybody, the right-wingist among us, is forced now to, when we're talking about this thing, to say, this isn't about the rank and file of the FBI. It's about the 5 or 6 people that are mentioned in this memo and all these texts and everything else. We think they're the rotten ones. And that's what the president says as well. What is this thing about the full-throated attack? That's ridiculous, Juan.
You think that's ridiculous?
I think it's ridiculous.
Really? Because people might confuse it. I see.
Because no one has a full-throated attack on the FBI.
Oh.
Not even Sean Right-Wing Hannity. Every night he can't finish a sentence without saying this isn't about the rank and file.
Yeah,
we all agree on that one, including the president.
You know what, Tom? You've been vindicated, to quote President Trump. Yes, that memo has vindicated you. And Hannity,
100%.
Hannity will vindicate you tonight. Oh, vindicate? Yes, vindicate. Validate. A surprise Olympic decision by Kim Jong-un coming up next. Stay with us.
The 2018 Winter Olympics begin in South Korea on Friday. North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un won't be there, but he's sending his younger sister to attend as part of a government delegation. History will be made. Kim Yo-jong will be the first immediate member of her ruling family to ever set foot in the South. The news was just announced before Vice President Pence delivered a new warning to her big brother.
I'm announcing today that the United States of America will soon unveil the toughest and most aggressive round of economic sanctions on North Korea ever. And we will continue to isolate North Korea until it abandons its nuclear and ballistic missile program once and for all.
So, Kimberly, I like this diplomatic approach because when the North Koreans said, well, we'll maybe told the South Koreans, we'll come down if we could do something joint. And we were all like, OK, good. Well, maybe this is good, a nice opening. And then we follow up with a little bit of, but don't forget, we're watching you and we're going to continue to make sure you denuclearize. I like it.
I think it is. It was measured. It was reasonable. It seems that it's, it's been effective. And so far, they should maintain this course. And then I think it's interesting that he's sending a woman, sending his sister there. So he's trying to make some smart moves on, his behalf to improve their international image and sending a female, all of the above, especially since they have had horrific press, deservedly so,
Yes.
in light of Otto Warmbier and what they did to him and the other human rights atrocities that they commit on a regular basis under this regime. So, but I think the words of our Vice President were very measured and good and forceful in the right tone.
So, Jesse, do you think that all of this attempt by North Korea to look so normal is maybe going a little too far, that the South Koreans might have gone overboard?
Well, the South Korean prime minister's approval rating starting to nosedive as these attempts at reunification are going along. What do we call the sister? Little Rocket Woman? I think Trump needs a new nickname for her. I'd like to see a picture of her. Is that her right there?
I think so.
Okay.
Ask and you shall receive.
Yeah, I think it's a smart overture on Little Rocket Man's behalf to send the younger sister. It's all converging at the same time. These sanctions are really starting to bite. I think the president deserves credit for the tough sanctions, along with the war games going on and some of the rhetoric on coming out of the United States and our generals. So, hopefully this goes in the right direction, because I know they better behave themselves during the Olympics or there's going to be hell to pay.
One, it is pretty remarkable that he would send his sister, and she is the first person in their family to ever step foot in South Korea since the split.
It's, from a historical point of view, you got to stop and think, wow, those people are so divided. I mean, they're neighbors. What strikes me about this is that in terms of the sanctions, her presence there is a violation of the